Hello and welcome, people around the world, to watch our round 5 here at Grand Prix Lille. Christian Ortiz-Rose is up against the 10th ranked player in the world, Gregor Kowalski, who had a fantastic run at the World Championship in the old standard, looking to do good work in the new standard too. He's on kind of a cool list, Selesnya Explore, we're calling it. Selesnya, this is the deck that can potentially go super wide. How will it play out against Golgari mid-range? It tends to replace some of the raw sort of card advantage with the ability to create a lot of threats, and that means that the removal of Christian Ortiz-Ross may be a little bit stretched here.
And one thing that already worries me a little bit is Forest for Christian Ortiz. No black source, triple forest. Yeah, this basically when you have like black green land, you usually play it on turn 2 or 1. So playing 2 forests on turn 2 is not very promising.
Now, and I guess at least the small consolation is that so far Kowalski has not fired out gigantic threats, but nothing to say that that's not going to change relatively soon here. With a lot of Selesnya lists, the expectation would be that you're going to get out a bunch of small creatures and then start using the Convoke mechanic to get something going, or play a big sort of Anthem effect of some description to make your creatures bigger. For Kowalski here, his creature's just naturally getting bigger thanks to Explore, either the Explore itself or, as with Wild Growth Walker, just the fact that every time you explore, you're able to put a counter on it and gain a bit of life. Jadelight Ranger from Christian Ortiz-Rose here, finally meaning that he's able to get a creature on the board. He's also now got access to black mana, gradually piecing together the things that he needs.
Here comes the sun.
The Immortal Sun, meaning that now Gregor Kowalski, his team is substantial in size, and he's going to have a little bit more access to card drawing. The Immortal Sun, a powerful mythic that didn't see loads of play in Standard previously, and you see there, getting red there, players can't activate Planeswalkers. You draw an extra card, your spells cost less, and your creatures get an extra +1/+1. Being able to shut down Planeswalkers, I can see being something that's going to take a little bit of the wind out of the sails of this Golgari list.
Yeah, one of the ways for Golgari to gain advantage are the bigger Planeswalkers, Vraska, Vivian Reed. I mean, they could both destroy the Immortal Sun if it not were for the can't activate Planeswalker ability.
As things stand, Christian's going to have to go a different path. He does have access to black mana now and uses it to get a little bit more exploring going on. Both these decks doing a lot. That a Seeker Squire, actually a one-of Seeker Squire in his deck, the only one that he's choosing to run here today. But his Explores all turning up spells, meaning that he's got +1/+1 counters all over the place.
Does he have main deck answers to the Immortal Sun? I don't see any.
I mean, the obvious one that one might look for is Assassin's Trophy, but Assassin's Trophy isn't an automatic 4-of in these lists, in spite of how powerful it looks on the face of things.
Yeah, it's actually only in a sideboard 2 copies, so I don't think this is going to be very hard for Christian Ortiz-Ross. I mean, you could win against the Immortal Sun if you have some pressure going, but if your opponent is already ahead on board and has the Immortal Sun, then it's looking very bad. There's even the Memorial to Glory to generate some blockers if needed. I think this game is going to go to Gregor Kowalski.
Well, yeah, that's 2 Explorers with 2 Wild Growth Walkers in play. So they're each growing to be 3/5. Sorry, 4/6 thanks to the Immortal Sun. Also gaining a cool 12 life there.
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
For 2 mana.
I don't see how Christian, like even Find Finality -4/-4 leaves both walkers on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredibly potent start for Gregor Kowalski here. Midnight Reaper coming along for Ortiz-Ross. He will be having creatures die comparatively soon because he's going to have to do some big blocks soon enough. And this is a big Convoke.
Is it 6 tokens with the one from the Immortal Sun as well?
Yeah, March of the Multitudes means that Kowalski's board now is utterly terrifying, if it wasn't before.
And this Golgari deck is very good, but as I already said once, it doesn't have a meaningful way of interacting with March of the Multitudes into Flower Flourish. I mean, now +2/+2 my whole army, it's not even needed because there's already the Immortal Sun, but imagine now +2/+2, it's going to be huge. I don't think he has it just yet, but I would just swing with the team here. Look at that. How many creatures? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Minus 3 is 8, so at least 16 damage, right? Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, Kowalski just putting on a clinic there. That game took barely 5 minutes in total. The power of the Immortal Sun, obviously part of what was going on. Obviously, Christian Ortiz-Ross, early stages of that game, his draw was not exciting. Stuck on just green mana for longer than he might have liked and couldn't really get anything going there. But yeah, Selesnya doing the do in game one as these players go to their sideboards. And as we start to look towards the sideboards, what might we expect to come in?
I think actually Gregor Kowalski is not going to sideboard all that much. His deck is just built to beat Golgari, it seems. He's got a very slow deck. His only cards that cost less than 4 mana are Jade Light Ranger, Llanowar Elves, Branch Walker, Wild Growth Walker, and 1 Baffling Hand. And then there's so many expensive cards. 4 March of the Multitudes, 4 Path of Discovery, 3 The Immortal Sun, 4 Trostani Discordant. So many expensive cards. I can't see this deck win against a control deck with counters, but in this matchup it just looks so well positioned.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess one thing to say about the Golgari mid-range deck, normally it wants games to go long. Normally this is the kind of deck that if you give it time and you give it mana, it ought to come out on top because everything that it's doing is generating some sort of value. It's exploring, it's got creatures coming into play abilities to kill creatures or to bring things back from the graveyard, and it just gets to kind of grind things out. It's a real sort of mid-range grind in the purest possible sense, which is a very Golgari trait. For this Selesnya deck, though, it doesn't mind games going long either because it's simply got these absolutely gigantic bombs that come down, and the Immortal Sun there pre-answers every single Planeswalker that might be going on the other side of things. And in the main deck, Christian Ortiz-Ross has 5 Planeswalkers. Sorry, 7 Planeswalkers.
Yep. 7.
So you're shutting off more than 10% of your opponent's deck just by playing 1 card. And we didn't really get a good chance to see what was in Christian's hand there, but it could well be that he had the kind of hand that was fantastic in other matchups, but that just didn't have a good answer to Kowalski being able to deploy his big artifact.
No, at least after Cyber, it's going to look a little bit better for Christian Rost. He does get to bring in some Assassin's Trophy to handle the Immortal Sun. Maybe another fine finality, maybe even Duress would not be that bad. I mean, there's Path of Discovery, there's the Immortal Sun, and March of the Multitudes, all cards which he has a very hard time handling. So I do think Duress is a good card to bring in.
Kowalski is one of these players who he treats Magic, this is his job. When he is not playing in a big event, he is testing for a big event. He has a lot of time where he's busily getting a feel for what the format looks like overall and then making smart decisions as to exactly how he wants to tweak his deck to best exploit that. Magic Online is where he lives, and then every week or two he goes on holiday to a big event, and typically you can expect him to do very well indeed. These guys just finishing it up there, shuffling here. Plenty of time to do so because, of course, Game 1 did not take very much time at all. Hopefully we'll see a slightly better draw from Christian, just so we can get a better sense of how a fully tooled up Golgari deck does against this Selesnya list, because this Selesnya deck is exactly the kind of thing that I kind of want to sleeve up or virtually sleeve up and get a few games in with, just because of how powerful it seemed in Game 1. It looks like this time round Llanowar Elves will be on Christian's side of things rather than Greg's. Greg starting off with a Memorial to Glory there. The Memorials all seeing a fair amount of play at this point. Just an easy way of extracting a bit more value from that mana base.
That's a sweet Llanowar Elf.
2 copies of Llanowar Elves now. The first one just getting stuck in there. And there is the first Merfolk Branchwalker of the game. Sees the Immortal Sun on top. Does he want to mill that one? Ultimately, whether he does or not will tell us a little bit of how many lands are already in Kowalski's hand here.
A little bit early in the day for the Immortal Sun. 2 mana.
Before sunrise, you'd say?
Yeah. We're still before sunrise. But if he's got like 2 or 3 lands, he could definitely keep it. Kind of depends how much can he skip his next draw step. Is his hand good enough to skip his next draw step? That's the big question here. Yeah, seems like he finds his hand good enough. And now Christian Ortiz-Ross, he knows that on turn 6 the doors will be closed, although he does have the Assassin's Trophy, it seems. So he already has the answer, but is he gonna wait with his Assassin's Trophy? He kind of has to, right? He cannot really use it earlier, because that would even ramp Kowalski into an early...
And I guess he could use it right now to force a shuffle.
Yeah.
If he was that bothered about the...
I think it's even a May, but I guess skipping on land wouldn't be the best. Golden Demise coming from the Cyber. Great answer to March of Multitudes.
So there we see upkeep flower being used. So
it's not any upkeep, I think. I think he drew.
you think he did draw? Okay. Fetches up a forest that says winner on it. That has been true of Gregor Kowalski every round thus far in this tournament, and indeed a large proportion of the rounds in the World Championship. He was leading the pack for much of the time in the World Championship, ultimately not quite able to convert it into the trophy, but he had a fantastic weekend in Las Vegas.
That's a good draw here for Christian Ortiz. I do think he is the expensive Vraska already. The 6 mana could destroy the Merfolk Branchwalker, and then he's looking at a very great board state with 3 creatures and a Planeswalker facing nothing but 3 lands. As I said, Gregor Kowalski's deck looks good, but it is quite expensive. He's holding double Trostani Discordant and the Immortal Sun, so that's all very expensive cards.
So Vraska comes down, and Vraska, one of the Planeswalkers that often you'll see the first ability she uses is her minus ability to be able to deal with a threat on the battlefield. From there on out, though, +1, sacrificing a permanent, drawing a card, gaining a life, pretty solid, meaning that potentially in the future she'll be able to gain even more value killing something else.
Christian keeping up black-green mana here is very surprising to me. I guess it signals Assassin's Trophy, but what would be that good that's skipping that 1 damage? It's actually 2 damage because he tapped the other Llanowar Elves. I'm very surprised here.
Path of Discovery here, a good setup card for Kowalski here. It's going to mean that his creatures, when they come into play, they get to explore. Wild Growth Walker triggering itself seems pretty potent. And triple explore with Jade Light Ranger, nothing to sniff at also. So Christian there sacrificing a land to Vraska to be able to draw a card, gain a life.
Path of Discovery is going to be very good with Trostani Discordant. So Christian has to be a little bit careful, but he's going to play the other Vraska and destroy the Path of Discovery.
Worth noting, guys, these 2 different Vraskas and the way the rules work on Planeswalker uniqueness these days, as long as they have different titles, you can have both of them in play at the same time. That meaning Vraska Relic Seeker, absolutely fine on this battlefield as Trostani Discordant comes down for Kowalski. All of those soldiers generated by Trostani, right now at least, are 2/2 creatures with lifelink.
Yeah, but there's still the Vraska Relic Seeker at 3, so that one could destroy the Trostani Discordant. The other Vraska could destroy a token if needed, then attack. Yeah, there's still the treasure from last turn, which the judges were still searching out. So he still has a lot of options. Also find Finality. Could actually grow his Jade Light Ranger and sweep the board. This is going to be a tough game for Gregor Kowalski. He might be counting on his Immortal Sun next turn, but we know there's the Assassin's Trophy in hand from Ortiz-Ross, Christian.
Yeah, this game going substantially better for Christian Ortiz-Ross here. Though, I guess that he still has the concern of if next turn the Immortal Sun comes down, he is priced into using that Assassin's Trophy. He can't really get around that.
And the reason why this game is going so much better is simply because of Llanowar Elves. If Christian wouldn't have had these, his first play would have been a turn 3 Jade Light Ranger, and that would not have been enough. Llanowar Elves so very important in these green mid-ranging mirrors. Getting ahead on the board, being able to deploy your planeswalkers a turn earlier, very important.
And now that Llanowar Elves also representing a card there, taps to generate mana first, and it turns out that Ortiz Rose drew into Ravenous Chupacabra. He had a few options, goes for Finality. Let's kill everything apart from Jade Light Ranger, who is now pretty large.
Yeah, well, now it's a 2-1. But next turn, it's going to be a 6-5. Gets in for 2. Gregor's down to 9.
And these various Vraskas ticking up a lot of different axes on which Kowalski now needs to operate.
And Gregor's, like, if there would not have been the Assassin's Trophy, he could still easily win this game by playing the Immortal Soul this turn and going down to 1 life. But we know better. Assassin's Trophy and then use my boat, my 2 planeswalkers yet again, is just gonna shut the door. He's played so many expensive cards, but all of them were answered quite favorably. Like, Path of Discovery was answered by Vraska, Trostani Discord was answered by Finality, and now for 2 mana he's gonna see his The Immortal Sun go to the graveyard.
And as things stand, Christian can kind of be a little bit cute with this, do everything else he wants to do on the turn, knock Gregor Kowalski down to 1 before even thinking about dealing with the Immortal Sun. It's only as a last effort that he gets the Immortal Sun out the way before, of course, Kowalski would be able to draw an additional card with it.
Seems like it's nighttime once again.
Lights out for Kowalski.
That's a sweet one. He actually sacrificed the treasure with Vraska to draw a card.
These Vraskas helping each other out. It's almost like they're related.
There we see Assassin's Trophy. Such a huge card. Doesn't see that much play yet in Standard, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see more and more in the upcoming weeks. It's such a powerful effect. Sure, giving your opponent a land is huge, but being able to answer any permanent is just very good.
Yeah, I've seen it played in Modern. I've seen it played even in Legacy. Now, obviously, in Legacy, it's got some pretty stiff competition, and there are thems that would argue that, well, you've got another option at green-black that can kill off things that cost 3 or less and can't be countered. What's left? Well, it's like, well, Gomag Angler, Jace, like, there's a lot of big things in Legacy that you want to be able to remove, and Assassin's Trophy does it all. Hitting lands also very important.
Ooh.
2 attackers.
He's actually playing around Settle the Wreckage, but wasn't he dying to March of the Multitudes? If Gregors could create 4 tokens, he could actually block, but I don't think he had enough mana to make 4 tokens. So well played by Christian.
All right, we're going to see these guys going back to their sideboards now. We will have a game 3. After a very straightforward game 1 for Gregor Kowalski, Ortiz Ros getting points on the board there, thanks in no small part to those copies of Llanowar Elves accelerating every part of his game plan in game 2. And now it will be up to Kowalski to see whether or not on the play he can bounce back. Half an hour left on the clock. These guys been playing fairly briskly. I mean, this is something that you see from players that have been playing for a long time that get a lot of reps in. I mean, for Kowalski, every deck that you ever see him at a tournament with, I would fully expect that he's got a lot of games under his belt with, which means that operationally he tends to play relatively quickly. He can choose his moments to really think about plays, and they're the ones that fall outside of his regular experience, I guess.
Yeah, and it's definitely an advantage knowing the format this well that you don't have to think about the small decisions. No, taking your time for the decisions that really matter is a big advantage. And if you play this much, yeah, you get to know the format very well. You know what your opponent is going to bring in, what he's going to sideboard. Do I have answers to his sideboard? And stuff like that are what makes a good player into one of the best.
Turns out that talent plus practice is a difficult thing to beat. Looks like a last-minute change there by Christian, just as he finally confirms that he likes his sideboarding and starts to shuffle on up. How much do you think that the play or the draw matters in this particular matchup? Because it feels to me like both of these decks, while they can do things early, go a little bit longer.
Well, we just saw what a turn 1 Llanowar Elf on the play could do, so it definitely matters. If both of these players have no Llanowar Elf, then I think the advantage of going first goes a little bit down. But given there is 4 Llanowar Elves in both decks, I think it's very important. And actually, Christian Roos also has 4 Druid of the Cowl.
That not necessarily something that you'd expect to see in every green-black list.
His plan is really to jump these planeswalkers into play as quick as possible. 7 planeswalkers. That's his main plan. He's also got 4 Midnight Reaper to make up for playing that many creatures that produce mana, because if they die, he still gets to draw a card at least. But his main plan is really turn 4, Vivian Reed, turn 5, Vraska Relic Seeker, turn 3, Vraska Golgari Queen.
Seems like a reasonable plan to me. It's worked out for 1 game out of 2 for him. The game where he got the acceleration was the game where he was very much in the driver's seat. And these guys now hopefully will find themselves with hands that they can work with in the final game, so that we get to see each deck at its best.
Gregor Skowalski, of course, number 10 ranked player in the world. He's definitely already thinking about next Pro Tour.
Yeah, it's not far off. Just a couple of weeks away, we are going to be in Atlanta, Georgia for the Pro Tour. The Pro Tour's been to Atlanta for a few stops. It's certainly one of those areas that pro players of the last 10 years or so will know comparatively well. But this format, it's going to be one that's... I think it really is going to reward the people who put in the work, because a lot has changed since the last standard format. And I do believe that there's the potential for someone to come along with something a little bit special at this Pro Tour.
Talking about turn 1 Llanowar Elves. There we go. Ooh, immediately answered by Christian's own Llanowar Elf. So this is going to be a very quick game. Imagine the one on the draw not having that Llanowar Elf. He's already down 2 mana at that point. Is it another one? This is perfect for Gregor Skowalski. He has so many expensive cards in his deck that he really needs to accelerate. I'm a bit surprised that he not plays another way to ramp into his 3 Immortal Sun, Path of Discovery, March of the Multitudes package.
Yeah, we do see that Christian does have access to at least 1 Vraska in hand, and he's still got lands to work with, so that's kind of plan A. But if it works out that Kowalski again has his Immortal Sun and there's not an Assassin's Trophy, then that could be a pretty big problem.
Imagine next turn Trostani Discordant coming down.
I may not need to imagine it, Moraine. It may just happen. All right, Christian, what have you got for us here?
He's tapping 3. He could Midnight Reaper or Jadelight Ranger. He's going for the Midnight Reaper as a blocker for the Llanowar Elves, but just drawing some extra cards. Although I don't think he should be that concerned of losing any of his creatures anytime soon. I think I would have liked playing the Jadelight Ranger there.
Path of Discovery coming from Kowalski. That will mean that all of his future creatures getting that much better. I like the Path of Discovery quite a bit. It's one of those cards that it's taken a while to really find a home, but once you start having these decks with a lot of explorers, it's almost like it's better having creatures that are exploring multiple times than just sort of having it alongside other things, because it means that things like Wild Growth Warthog are just that much more consistent. And
now Vraska coming down -3 on the Llanowar Elves. It does leave the Vraska at 1, but there's still the Midnight Reaper to block. Let's see if Gregor Skowalski has a Conclave Tribunal, because that one would have been very good.
Just passes it back.
Of course, Path of Discovery works very well with March of the Multitudes. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield. Most of these cards would say whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, but Path of Discovery does not. So it will explore every token Gregor produces. Even
Ravenous Chupacabra coming down, Llanowar Elves, a parting shot just to generate a little bit of mana.
Even with Memorial to Glory.
And here is that March of the Multitudes. Not generating too crazy an amount of tokens here. Just a couple coming down, but they're each going to get to explore.
Merfolk Branchwalker goes into the graveyard, does make a 2/2 lifelink, and now another multiple March of the Multitudes. Ooh, that's where they get really good.
Yep, the first one begets the second very nicely. Now, where's this March of the Multitudes going to go?
I don't think he has another land. He would have preferred like one land, one big spell, but I guess this is not too bad either. For next turn, he can do it for 3 and then explore 3 times. That's definitely a good choice. One card he does have to be careful for is Find Finality at this point. Could sweep his whole board and would still leave the Vraska. I think there's still a Vraska activation at this point. Yeah. Thing is, do you actually sacrifice one of your lands knowing that you need 6 for next turn Vraska? I think I would sacrifice the Ravenous Chupacabra, but you do also have to be careful that you do not lose your Planeswalker to the soldiers.
I mean, sacrificing a creature is kind of exciting because you have the Reaper in play, meaning that you're actually going to end up drawing 2 cards. You're not going to get any life. The life that you gain gets cancelled out by the life that you lose to Midnight Reaper, but I like this interaction a lot. Sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards.
Yeah. And he is sacrificing his 6th land, but he is drawing 2 cards, so that should not be too big of a problem. Next turn he can actually do the same.
And he drew into a Golden Demise there, and Golden Demise, perfect at dealing with however many tokens March of the Multitudes ends up creating for Kowalski here.
Ooh, this is good news for Christian Ortiz-Ross. Gregor Kowalski is gonna March of the Multitudes in his own turn, and he's running right into that Golden Demise. Even though these tokens are 2/2, they're not big enough. One of them is gonna be a 2/2. The others are 1/1s. They still have lifelink, of course. He's doing this because he needed to hit a land to play it for next turn, the Immortal Sun, but now Golden Demise is gonna be golden.
Yeah, this is... I mean, he's not quite got the City's Blessing, nor do I think that he's easily going to be able to get there.
Well, he's got 8. If he plays a Llanowar Elf and a land, he's there. I do believe he has a Llanowar Elf. Does he have another permanent to play? Llanowar Elf... I don't think he has. The question is, maybe he can even wait.
The danger in waiting is that if something like Trostani Discordant comes down, then it will be a lot more difficult to really leverage the Golden Demise because it won't kill anything but the smaller tokens, the ones that explode into lands.
Or the Immortal Sun.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of Anthem-type effects that Kowalski could potentially play next turn. I think that he kind of has to go for the Golden Demise now.
But if he plays the Golden Demise, he loses his whole board, does draw 3 cards, but then he's left with just a Planeswalker, and then the Immortal Sun is just as good. So this is a tough decision for Christian Ortiz-Ross.
I mean, if he has an Assassin's Trophy...
Yeah, then it's an easy choice, I guess. Then he can just wait till next turn, because he can Assassin's Trophy the Trostani Discordant or the Immortal Sun. Maybe he could just draw a card first. I guess he's getting kind of punished for sacrificing the Llanowar Elf last turn, because otherwise he would have had the City's Blessing.
But, I mean, he wouldn't have drawn into the Golden Demise anyway, so it's kind of a push there, I guess.
I think I like sacrificing the Chupacabra here.
Yep, get the extra card where you can. Once you've decided that you're going to be using the Golden Demise now, you might as well get the value you can.
This is a tough decision for Christian. He drew another Llanowar Elf, so I believe he has 2 right now. He can actually play Vivian Reed and destroy the Path of Discovery. All of that is pretty good, but bad against the Immortal Sun. Does he know? He knows about the Immortal Sun, actually, because of the Branchwalker. Yeah, he needs to Golden Demise here.
All right, lots of creatures dying. Christian loses a little bit of life, but also gets to draw some cards.
This will come down whether or not Christian draws one of his 2 Assassin's Trophy. He knows he needs the answer for the Immortal Sun. Otherwise, all of his Planeswalker. And he's holding Vivian Reed, another Vraska. And he's already got the small Vraska in play.
Gets down a couple of Landmar Elves after the fact. So he's drawn all 4 Landmar Elves in this game 3. The life total's 18 apiece right now. So at the moment on the board, Christian Ortiz a little bit ahead. But we've seen Kowalski build up a board pretty fast before. We'll see whether or not he can do so again. All right, there's the Immortal Sun. With it in play, Vraska's not doing a whole lot, and Gregor gets to draw more cards, and his creatures are larger.
I guess the Immortal Sun is one of the reasons why people are starting to play Threshing Brontodon in black-green. We've seen quite some people putting that one in. It was never played in the early stages of the deck list, but the Immortal Sun is so good against you that I don't blame them for playing the card like Threshing Brontodon. I mean, you've got plenty of ways to deal with artifact and enchantments, Vivian Reed and Vraska, but you have no way of dealing with the Immortal Sun.
So once more we have this situation with Midnight Reaper plus a whole bunch of creatures for Christian. For Gregor now, he has enough cards to work with that we should expect to see him do something fairly big here.
2 mana Jade Light Ranger.
3 Explores.
Bam. This is when it really gets going. If you got the Immortal Sun, Path of Discovery, that's just crazy. Every creature you play is 1 mana less, it's bigger, and it gets to explore one more time.
Gets to use a Conclave Tribunal to deal with Midnight Reaper, so there won't be a big flurry of card drawing from Christian's side of things. He's going to have to work with what he's got. Now, does he have ways of dealing with this Immortal Sun? Because if not, the corner could turn relatively quickly here for Gregor Kowalski.
Assassin's Trophy or bust. Find Finality is fine. Could get back the Chupacabra and another Midnight Reaper. But he needs to pressure Gregor Kowalski very quickly. He needs to kill him in like 1 or 2 attacks, but there's still, I believe, another March of Multitudes in Kowalski's hand.
So that was fined in order to get back Ravenous Chupacabra and indeed that Midnight Reaper. So clears a path, gets stuck in with Jade Light Ranger. Right now on the board, it's Christian Ortiz-Ross that has the damage, but Gregor Kowalski drawing a couple of cards a turn. His spells are cheaper, his creatures are bigger, he's exploring extra times with his creatures. Every creature that he has is doing a huge amount of work, and he's got the mana to cast a lot of them, but just passing back here screams to me March of the Multitudes. So a big old march here would generate a lot of tokens, a lot of explore, a lot of lifelink as well, it must be said.
Gregors could even play the Trostani Discordant first, but seems like he wants as many tokens as possible. He's gonna make 6 2/2s, maybe even 3/3s. So he's gonna gain at least 12 life if he chooses to. It's gonna be hard for Christian to come back. He needs to draw Assassin's Trophy off his creatures dying with Midnight Reaper.
There we see Gregor just sort of carefully counting out his lands here. Yes, there's 2 copies of March of the Multitudes already in the graveyard, but you know what? He doesn't just play 2. So this is X equaling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The cost of it, of course, reduced by 1 thanks to the Immortal Sun. So 6 explore triggers, reveals Immortal Sun off the top for the first one.
He could just leave that one on top, making it all 3/3s. And I think that's what he's gonna... I know. He's choosing to
Leaving Wild Growth Walker on the top. That one I kind of like. It's more life gain. It's more... He knows that he's going to be exploring a whole bunch.
It's a 1 mana, 2/4, gain 3.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. These.
At least 2/4, potentially 3/5.
Yeah.
The standard Tarmogoyf.
No, it's actually... Oh, yeah, it's a 2/4. And now, wow, very well played by Gregor Kowalski. He could start killing these Llanowar elves for free, but he doesn't want to give Christian Ortizos extra draws. But what he does do is block with all of the creatures because they all have lifelink. So he's going to gain 12 life, go back to 24, and take...
He's gaining 18 life because they're all 3/3s.
3/3, yeah. Oh, very well played by Gregor Kowalski. He knows the way for Christian Ortizos to come back is Assassin's Trophy. Doesn't want him to draw too many cards, just blocks 1, but still gains a bunch of life in the process.
And that draw, just a forest for Christian Ortiz Ross.
Rough.
A rough draw. Druid of the Cowl, the best that he can do as he has to pass things back. And it's not going to take very long for Gregor Kowalski to close this game out. Draws 2 cards from the Immortal Sun.
Just a trivia question for everyone in the chat. Who made the Immortal Sun?
Feel free to sound off in that one in the chat. No prizes.
No prizes.
But at some point, Moraine will inform you on the answer with that one. For now, though, Gregor Kowalski, he is working his way towards a prize. He's got his forest that has winner written on it, and he wants to make sure that that forest is not made a liar this game. Now might be a good time for a Trostani. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, my creature's not big enough. I want bigger creatures.
I'd have been tempted to play Wild Growth Walker first, just so that you can gain even more life. Do you want to leave that March of the Multitudes on top there, Moraine? it's a choice.
It's not that good. How many marches is too many?
How he casts Flourish in order to make sure that this attack is plenty lethal, because all of those soldiers before even the Flourish were 4/4s thanks to Trostani and the Immortal Sun. Now 6/6s, so that's 5 6/6s, all with lifelink coming in. One of them can get blocked by Druid of the Cowl. The other 4, though, 24 damage with lifelink. There's the handshake.
Bam.
Gregor Kowalski picks up the win there. 5-0 for Kowalski, and this Selesnya Explore deck, it seems like the real deal. I like the look of this a lot.
We do have to say he did get the Llanowar Elf draw in both games he won. His deck is quite slow, so I'm not sure how good it handles decks with counterspells, but in these games he won, it was super amazing.
Dominant.
Yeah,
Dominant
sure.
play there from Gregor Kowalski. We will have more Magic for you from our feature match area soon enough. After a pretty exciting first match, we are going to get a chance to jump back in a Time Walk fashion to see a little bit more Magic from here in Lille. I know that we've got a couple of other players in our feature match area who are going to be good ones to check out. So we will get a chance to see them soon enough, but do not go anywhere. More Magic after these messages. Hello and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Lille. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Marijn Leibert, and we have some more magic for you here from Grand Prix Lille. It's round 5, and we get a chance to jump back down to our feature match area for some time walk magic. That means that we're not having to start halfway through the round. We get to go right back to the very beginning, where it's Arne Huschenbeth on Is It Phoenix against Elias Klocker, who's on a mono blue list that, if you guys were watching the World Championship, might look relatively familiar, because this is one of the comparatively small number of decks in the format that hasn't really changed as much with the rotations as most. It got played by just the one player at the World Championships, but now we may see it played by a few more. I think that there's a couple of big names in the field that are running it. Siren Stormtamer coming down, that one a good answer to various spells. And Is It Phoenix, very much a spells deck. We've already seen a Spell Pierce on Charter Course, and Opt now coming from Klocker, who's very happy to churn through his deck at a rate of knots here, digging for the likes of Tempest Djinn, or hopefully maybe even a Curious Obsession.
Yeah, this mono blue tempo deck is basically Obsession or bust. Tempest Djinn is a nice backup plan, but it is a lot all in on Curious Obsession. And Elias Klocker actually with quite a different version. 4 Dive Down and 4 Spell Pierce. That's something we don't often see.
Arclight Phoenix getting tapped down by a Merfolk Trickster. A fair amount of Merfolk in this mono blue list. The Phoenix will, one would imagine, do relatively good work attacking in at some point, but I think there might be another Merfolk Trickster potentially in its future in these early stages of the game.
And Arne Huschenbeth running a lot of Drakes. 4 Enigma Drake and 3 Crackling Drake.
I quite like this version. I saw Mark Tobiash doing something very similar with both Enigma Drake and Crackling Drake, and it just means that for your Phoenix deck, you have much more reliably a gigantic threat on the board anytime that you resolve a creature. Only 3 Goblin Electromancer here. That's sometimes a 4 of in these lists. But this is a very cool deck that gets to cast lots of spells, and when it does hit, hits very hard indeed. There comes that Electromancer. So from now on, spells will be a little bit cheaper. And by the looks of things, Klocker with a number of copies of Spell Pierce, but just because of what it is that Huschenbeth has going on, he's not really allowing those Spell Pierces to shine just yet.
No, Elias Klocker's draw is very clunky. No Curious Obsession, no Tempest Djinn, and then we'll see how hard it is for a deck like that to really function. He does have triple Trickster, which should usually be enough in your aggro deck, but if that's all the pressure you get going, it's still gonna be tough. Now the question here for Arne is whether or not he wants to attack first before playing his Charter Course. Because drawing 2 is of course better than drawing 2 and discarding 1, but what if you draw Arclight Phoenix?
I mean, to get Arclight Phoenix, he needs to cast a lot of spells. So it needs to be Arclight Phoenix plus a few other bits that he's got going on there. I mean, I guess Arclight Phoenix plus Radical Idea would be enough, wouldn't it?
Yep.
So here do come the attacks.
He's attacking with the Goblin Electromancer. Elias actually going to kill the Electromancer, I believe, with the Merfolk Trickster, or at least going to try. I think that's a good choice, because Electromancer is still very good if all of these cards like Charter Course, Radical ID, Tormenting Voice, it's a little bit like in Modern, as we said. You don't want to leave your opponent with a Goblin Electromancer, your Izzet opponent. And now Arne is left with a tough choice. Does he first fire off the Charter Course, hoping to draw a 4th land to play a Drake, a Crackling Drake, or does he play the Crackling Drake and then might not be able to play his Charter Course? He's gonna hope to draw a 4th land.
Now, Elias has 2 copies of Spell Pierce here, so if he's really that bothered about Arne drawing additional cards, he could play the first Spell Pierce, see if Huschenbeth pays, and then potentially do so again. Yeah, looks like that's exactly what he wants here. And that means that Huschenbeth had no follow-up for the Charter Course at all.
Another
swings for 4 here.
Another island. This deck only runs 19, so not the best of draws.
Yeah, right now he's sat on Dive Down and an island, so keeping his creatures alive easy enough, but to be honest, the creatures he's got in play not all that exciting. Another Arclight Phoenix and Crackling Drake in hand, so Crackling Drake comes down, that draws a card, finds an opt for Hushinbeth, and right now I believe that he has, 3 spells in graveyard plus 1 in exile. Just the Arclight Phoenix getting stuck in for now. 4 toughness on these Drakes means that they are perfectly reasonable blockers in most circumstances.
And just when it's too late, he draws the Curious Obsession. It doesn't do anything against the Crackling Drake. Kinda has to say go, does still have the Dive Down, but didn't even have to use it or get to use it already. Because there was not really a creature he wanted to protect.
I must admit, of the various decks in the format, this is one of the ones that I'm most looking forward to gradually picking up the cards that I need on Arena to be able to play, because it just seems like it's got powerful cards, a good mix of rarities, and it looks like it's really fun to play, the Is It Phoenix deck. We can see, thanks to the joys of Time Walk, we get to go straight on to Game 2 without any delay. Opt coming from Elias Clocker here. There is a shock in hand for Anna Hushinbeth, but no target for it just yet.
Elias does have the Curious Obsession this time, but can he play a creature and protect it? That's going to be the question right now. He does have Wizard's Retort, Opt. So all you need to do is find a creature which he can protect then with Dive Down and Spell Pierce. The problem is the longer the game goes, the more removal Arne will be drawing. He's probably even sideboarded in a couple more, like Fury Cannonade, of course, very good, but not against this one, because that is a rogue. But Shock does get rid of it.
So Goblin Electromancer now coming down for Hushinbeth. The game going comparatively well for him here, it would seem. Siren Stormtail now coming down for Clocker, meaning that he's got some sort of collection of defense against whatever it is that Hushinbeth chooses to deploy here. Lava Coil costing just a single mana, though, will be a good answer to this Storm Tamer.
I think Elias has to counter here and just hope his Siren Storm Tamer goes all the way. This is going to be a tough game for Elias once again. He's used pretty much all of his resources to get a 1/1 flying into play. He could gain back some advantage with Curious Obsession, but what's left after that? If Arne ever resolves 1 Crackling Drake, all of the work is undone again.
Steam Vent's coming into play. Sorry, Sulphur Fall's coming into play. One way or another, Arne Hushinbeth having access to more red mana this turn, and that means potentially more removal that can get played on the Storm Tamer. Instead, though, Tormenting Voice discarding Lava Coil.
A bit surprised by that discard. Tempest Djinn is still one of the best cards for a mono blue deck.
I guess, though, that gradually Hushinbeth is getting up to the point where he's going to be able to have lots of cards in hand and gigantic Drakes, which can tussle with a Tempest Djinn. As things stand, though, Siren Stormtamer attacking him for 2, drawing a card for Elias Clocker, who continues to put islands into play. Very important, of course, for that Tempest Djinn.
Yeah, but now Shock. He drew 1 card with Curious Obsession, but lost it right away. Then Opt. And now he's left with just a 2/2 once again. This mono blue deck, it feels weird too. Every time I play against it, I lose with it. I lose against it. Every time I play with it, I lose with it. It's just.
So is the problem the deck, or is it with you?
It's probably the player. It's the player. I don't know. Every time I play against it, it feels like they have this unbeatable Curious Obsession draw. Protect it with Dive Down and then counter my next 3 spells. But then I play it and I draw a bunch of 1/1s and 2/2s.
Tricky situation for sure.
I mean, it's definitely a good deck. I don't think Ken Yukihiro would play it if it wasn't a good deck. He certainly played enough with it to know that it's very potent.
So Elias Clocker offering the trade there, and Arne Hushinbeth taking it. A little surprised that he chose to block there. 18 life, plenty to work with, and the power of Goblin Electromancer seems to be pretty high to me in this deck.
Yeah, but his hand is creature heavy, so I guess the Electromancer wouldn't do all that much. And getting rid of that Merfolk Trickster has some advantage. Like now Curious Obsession is not a problem anymore. Is that another Essence Scatter or a negate?
I think that there is a Curious Obsession in hand for Clocker once he finds a creature to put it on. Crackling Drake draws another card for Hushenbeth and means that he gets to pass with a little bit of mana up.
It is a negate, I think, and now he did draw the Tempest Djinn. I think I would have loved playing the Curious Obsession here, just in order to protect my Tempest Djinn against Lava Coil.
I mean, as things stand, Tempest Djinn, there are 2 creatures with variable power and 4 toughness that both fly, and Tempest Djinn, the smaller of the 2.
Arclight Phoenix, of course, not the best card against Tempest Djinn, although it can still block. Actually, playing the Curious Obsession would be bad, right? Don't you have to sacrifice it if you don't attack?
You do.
Yeah, that would be very good.
So, Jumpstart discarding Arclight Phoenix gives you a nice little blocker. As things stand, though, for now at least, Hushenbeth just electing to carry on casting spells from hand. Crackling Drake, absolutely colossal right now.
Yeah.
And now we see the Jumpstart Radical Idea. Back comes.
Yeah, this is a
Phoenix.
very good draw, and this is the strength of this Phoenix deck. Discard my Phoenix to a Radical ID. Once he has 6 mana, it's so easy to play 3 instants with all of these cards that replace themselves. Tormenting Voice, Radical ID, and Opt. And now he even gets to attack. With the Phoenix, he knows that next turn it will come back anyway. And I see you taking a picture of the deck list. Is this what you're going to be building during round 7?
It's entirely possible that I might be firing up Magic Arena, seeing what proportion of these cards I've already picked up and figuring out whether or not I can craft the rest of them. I like the look of this deck quite a bit. So Arclight Phoenix there, a creature that can come back from the graveyard multiple times, and unlike a lot of the other cards that's true of, it can block. It quite happily can just jump in the way of whatever it needs to.
Oh, it's a Metamorphic Alteration, I think, instead of Negate. It's gonna attack for 5, 6. You need to draw a creature here, right?
Yeah, I mean, this Crackling Drake attacks for just a crazy amount of damage now. And that's before we see Hushenbeth potentially casting a flurry of spells to get back up Arclight Phoenix. And yeah, Metamorphic Alteration.
He's gonna make his Crackling Drake a Tempest Djinn. Now it's only a 3/4, right?
It's still a flyer. It's still got 4 toughness. But now it only has power equal to the number of islands. But conveniently enough, Arna Hushenbeth also has more islands. This is a very strange state of affairs we find ourselves with here. Another Crackling Drake coming along, draws into a Radical Idea. Plays. What do we want to have here? I like the Metamorphic Alteration. It's an interesting choice.
Of course, it's a lot better if you can give your opponent a 1/1 flying or 1/1 unblockable. But in this situation, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can just double up on Tempest Djinns, right?
Yeah, it's like -3, -0 to your Crackling Drake.
So Clocker now on just 5 life. Attacks in here. He's going to lose the Curious Obsession if he doesn't, so I can kind of see the appeal of that.
Yeah, I guess he has to... He has to...
Draw something good.
Take it and then, yeah. Then Elias has to draw something good. Arn is blocking. You're not giving his opponent extra cards. I could see that as well.
All right. Goblin Electromancer. Let's go off to the races. Radical Idea. That's the first spell of the turn. Let's jumpstart it, discarding an Arclight Phoenix. That seems like a...
I think he's going to discard a land, because if he doesn't draw another spell, he can just hardcast the Phoenix. And he's already got 1 Phoenix in the graveyard, so getting back one, yeah, good decision here. Now with 4 mana, just plays a Phoenix. That's something I also like about the Arclight Phoenix. It's a decent card on its own.
Yeah,
And
3/2
haste
fly
for
for
4.
4. Yeah, it's not something that you're going to be. It's not a Dear Diary moment when you cast a 3/2 fly for 4 in constructed. But you know what? Could do worse. And when you get it for free, well, obviously fantastic. So good job there for Huschenbeth getting the win there with his red-blue deck. I'm going to fire up Magic Arena and see if I can build this deck up very shortly. You guys can take a short break, and afterwards you will have a little bit more of Riley and Simon bringing you round 6 here from Grand Prix Lille.